We're back with Kristen Smith of guns.com. And you've been writing about some gun bills in Nevada. What's been going on out there?
So Nevada is a very interesting case study, as we kind of talked about in the last segment. Background checks, universal background checks, and gun control is a very heavy lift at the federal level, but there is a lot of effort at the state level to get these things done. And Nevada
Because
seems
they're
to be
smart.
because Nevada seems to be one of those places where that is happening. And so I know this week the Senate Judiciary Committee is vetting three separate bills that two of them are being done actually as we speak. And they have to deal with the way the law treats gun owners who are convicted of domestic violence charges and who have protection from abuse orders issued against them. One of the bills, I believe it's Senate Bill 124, if I can remember correctly. Sorry, I want to check my notes to make sure I absolutely have it right. Don't misspeak here.
I think it was one of them changed the requirement for the judge to have discretion.
Yes.
And the other one expanded the actual offenses that would be included, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Senate Bill 124, it basically removes, the way I understand it, the way I've read it, is it removes the judge's discretion in deciding whether or not a person who is the subject of an extended protective order should surrender their firearms.
Yeah.
And then Senate Bill 387 is very similar to, actually, that something's moving through the Hawaii legislature. It would basically allow a court order to strip a person's gun rights if they are deemed a high-risk offender via a court order. And that has to be filed by law enforcement or a family member. And the interesting thing about that bill is if that order is issued, the person can then, or the law enforcement can then go and actually take the firearms from that person and charge them a fee for it. As far as now I'm interpreting the bill's language, and so that's what I read from it.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so that is two of the bills that they are vetting there. And then on Friday, they are going to hear a separate bill about changing, because medical marijuana was legalized there, they would basically allow people who have a medical marijuana identification card to have a handgun, which has, purchase firearms. And that would, compromise the, the concealed carry permit rules, because federally you cannot own a gun if you are addicted to, if you have a drug addiction, and marijuana would fall under that. So this bill deals with that.
Yeah. Out of everything you just got through saying, the one thing that I walked away from it not realizing, I've always known it, but with all of this talk from the other side about common sense this, common sense that, you see how complicated just dealing with even the minor aspects of gun laws in states are, and yet they still try to create this facade and this idea that the idea of dealing with gun laws in this country or dealing with the gun issue in this country is something that's so overly simplistic, so common sense. Why can't they just see it our way? Because there's nothing common sense about it. There's nothing simple about it. You kind of have to maneuver through all of these little things in order to make sure that, one, you're not denying someone's right to own a firearm under the Second Amendment, while at the same time trying to balance the notion of, public safety and making sure that people who shouldn't get guns shouldn't get them.
Convoluted, I think, is a fantastic word to describe gun laws from state to state. There's another gun bill, gun bill in the legislature, although I haven't been following this one as closely. I understand it would allow criminals who are shot for breaking into your home in Nevada to sue you, essentially. I know that there's different law, like the way that specific issue is handled almost differently in just about every state. Castle doctrine and stand your ground means something different in just about every state. And I know where I live in Pennsylvania, we have castle doctrine, but you still can be sued for shooting someone but not killing them. So I mean, to say that it is common sense to make these to make these reforms, no, not exactly. Even the proposed library or open carry library ban in Nevada, it is not as common sense straightforward as one would lead you to believe.
Yeah.
There is a convoluted web of why they want this bill and the way that it currently exists. And yeah, understanding it, I mean, sometimes I feel like I need a law degree to understand some of what they're coming up with.
I have one. I still spin in circles.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better.
No, you've hit the nail on the head at that point. Like, especially with the issue. Personally, I think that we should be advocating people sue people who force you to shoot them if they do break into your house for mental anguish and whatever losses that typically result as a result of you having to defend your life in your own house. I think I think there should be a law in place that would bar any suit with respect to somebody who has been ruled justified and taking the life or using lethal measures to deal with an intruder in their home. The fact that doesn't exist is kind of beyond me. I don't see why that isn't the case. But somehow there's also this kind of push to vilify the idea of self-defense in the same breath, as well as doing everything possible to get rid of guns in this country. So it's interesting to see how now we when we start talking about the idea of being sued or being able to sue, in my mind, some of those things are kind of a non-question. It's like you broke into my house. I didn't invite you here, and then we played bingo, and then I shot you. No, you broke into my house, and therefore you should pay the repercussions, especially if you do end up surviving, that result from that. So you've been reporting on the ATF as well. What have you learned about them?
So the ATF, I recently been reporting on an audit that was released on the way that they handle confidential informants. That there is the ATF, as I'm sure a lot of people know, has a lot of responsibilities. This was a specific audit dealing with how they handle their I believe it's more than 1,800 confidential informants from 2012 to 2015. So over the last 3 years, or 5 years, I guess we're at now. And as it seems, the ATF doesn't have an updated record system that you would think they would have. It seems that they seem to keep track of their confidential informants. Some of them who are very high-level people, have a lot of information. They keep track of them through, hard copy files and not necessarily like a computer database like you would think. And so it seems this audit has uncovered that they lose track of foreign national informants. They lose track of how much they're paying to informants. They can't tell you how many of their informants are actually federally licensed firearms dealers, for example. There's just a lot of, I guess the word that I used in my reporting was shoddy record keeping. And so therefore they don't have a very clear picture of who these people are that are delivering us very important information about drug trafficking, gun trafficking, and all the other kind of crimes that the ATF deals with.
Now, did you find in any of your research that the decision to largely keep all this information in hard copy files and not electronically was due to an overemphasis on confidentiality?
That was not something that I came across. It almost seems like
just incompetence.
I wouldn't say incompetence, but it is in dealing with different records requests and different branches of the government and from state level on up, it seems like there is a slowness to get digitized, and maybe this reaches all the way up to the ATF. In some ways, it can't be that simple that they just didn't get, they just don't have it organized. But that's kind of what the audit says. They're just unorganized.
I'm just going to put it like this. If I want to build a rifle that's less than 16 inches long, I have to submit form and paperwork to the ATF. And they usually are taking now, I think, about 6 to 7 months to tell me it's okay to cut my rifle down below 16 inches. I can go to a gun store and get an instant background check. Instantly. I'm trying to understand why it takes so long to get permission to cut down a barrel of a rifle down below 16 inches, and I can go and buy a gun and get an instant background check. They're essentially doing the same thing on their end with respect to running a background check and all of this messing around, whatever it is that they're doing on the back end. I say all of that to say this. The people out there who are just so gung-ho about the government taking control and doing everything for us and giving more power to the government with respect to our Second Amendment rights and thinking that it's going to run flawlessly. And that's a relatively high standard. Actually, it's an incredibly high standard. To think that it's not going to be run competently is kind of naive in that sense. Because like you just pointed out, and you said it wasn't that they're incompetent, but we are dealing with a system that has proven time and time again that they aren't the most efficient and they aren't the most efficient use of resources with respect to money and getting things done in a way that doesn't bog down a system. And so the fact that we have people on the other side who are constantly advocating adding more to the plates of the agents that have to deal with these things, it's baffling to me, to be honest with you. I just don't understand why they can't see how problematic that is.
Yeah, it is an interesting point that you raised because as a reporter, like I said, I have dealt with many different branches of government, and I've always run into issues like this. It's just the information that you need is just not going to be as accessible as you think for simple things because they haven't put it on a computer system yet for whatever reason. And so, yeah, the idea that, we can just suddenly implement a universal background check system nationwide and it's going to turn out flawlessly. There would be some questions there as to how that can be when the ATF, has
I think
6 different files on one informant,
Yeah.
for example. I mean, there's many. I mean, and we look at, for example, the Charleston loophole. I know that a lot of gun rights advocates do not prefer that term, and I understand why. But let's look at what happened there. It was a breakdown in record keeping systems at local levels that led to him being able to buy this gun. So, if the state and local governments have trouble keeping track of their contained group of residents, how is the federal government going to keep track of more than 300 million people in this country? There's definitely going to be some backlog. It's not going to be smooth sailing. They're not like Apple. They're not that technically advanced and coordinated. So yeah, it's an interesting point that you raised and that you
Absolutely, and even with respect to the Charleston situation, I call it the Charleston incompetence. What we're dealing with in that point, I don't think there's anybody advocating get rid of the NICS system. What we're saying is, why are we focusing on trying to expand the system that has clearly demonstrated a lack of efficiency?
Right, and
that doesn't make any sense.
I think that's where the Fix NICS campaign comes in. They're saying, let's fix what we have. Let's not, make it bigger. I mean, that is the problem. They already lose track of people as it is. So let's figure out how to track the people who aren't supposed to have guns in the first place.
Pretty much. It's like, if I have a hard time keeping my house clean and I have 1 bedroom, why would I go on and add 3 more bedrooms to the house that I can't keep 1 bedroom clean? It just doesn't, I don't know.
Yeah, they'll just fill up with junk. You'll see.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Christen. Please, anytime you want to come back on, let us know.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, women, wise, guns.